Hi, my name's Harriet, and I'm here to talk about an anime that I actually really love for once. Puella Magi Madoka Magica has been one of my favorite anime since I first saw it when I was 12 or 13, and this year, with the new movie coming out, which I am so excited about, I figured it was as good a time to talk about it as any. It's always really lovely when media that you loved as a child holds up as an adult, and I will say there is no media for which that is more 100% true for me than with Madoka. It hits me just as hard today as it did when I was a preteen, and I must say its music, direction, writing, and animation are all just astonishingly good. But I want to talk about one character in particular today, Sayaka Miki. I believe that Sayaka's character arc is a perfect encapsulation of what the show is representing and what makes it so special, and I think she deserves her own video talking about it. As Sayaka's character arc is wrapped up so completely in the themes and plot events of the show, this is going to delve into spoiler territory pretty quickly. I say this with my whole heart, if you have not watched Madoka, it is worth your time. It's only 12 episodes, but it has stuck with me so deeply that even hearing the titles of certain episodes can bring a tear to my eye. And as it has somehow been over a decade since the original release of the show, I am going to recap certain events as I talk about them. Madoka Magica follows protagonist Madoka Kaname, who is living a pleasant life with her friends and family, including her best friend, Sayaka Miki. This changes one day when she has a strange encounter with new transfer student Homura Akemi and older student Mami Tomoe, who are both revealed to be magical girls, essentially cute superheroines to those who are unfamiliar with the concept. The magical girl genre is an old one, with popular examples being media like Sailor Moon and Cardcaptor Sakura. In Madoka, the girls fight witches to keep the city safe in exchange for being granted one wish by a not at all unsettling cat creature named Kyubei. The wish can be anything, no matter how impossible, but in exchange, they are now duty-bound to do battle. The show immediately differentiates itself from a standard magical girl show with its notably darker tone. Even in the first 2 episodes before things really pop off, the witches are animated in a very unsettling and super cool stop-motion style, and the way the girls talk about the potential to have any wish granted is surprisingly realistic. Sayaka in particular has a very insightful monologue.
それが見つからない私たちって、その程度の不幸しか知らないってことじゃん。恵まれすぎて、バカになっちゃってるんだよ。
Most magical girl anime would have the girls in costume by the end of episode 1, if the show even waited that long. We find out that Sayaka is childhood friends with a prodigy violinist named Kyosuke Kamijo, who was injured in an accident and can no longer use his hand. She visits him to bring him CDs and debates using her one wish to help him heal. But Mami cautions her against it, warning her that she needs to make sure that the wish is what she wants, and that she isn't just using it because she wants Kyosuke to be grateful to her.
そこを履き違えたまま先に進んだら、あなたきっと後悔するから。
Sayaka admits the wish is naive, and the group moves on. But as fans of the show know, this cheerful veneer is not to last very long. At the end of episode 3, Mami, who has been guiding the girls through what it's like to be a magical girl, is suddenly and brutally killed by the witch she's fighting. While I think that the show is incorrectly identified often as a bait-and-switch dark anime, since the tone of the first 2 episodes is already fairly serious, this does mark a definite change in the status quo. Becoming a magical girl is no longer a magical thing to Sayaka and Madoka. They have come face to face with the real violence and danger that being a magical girl can bring, and is any wish really worth that? At the start of episode 4, after witnessing Mami's death, Sayaka and Madoka decide not to become magical girls. However, in that same episode, Sayaka goes to visit Kyosuke and he lashes out at her in misery over his injury. Sayaka goes back on not only 1 but 2 promises and uses her wish to heal him and become a magical girl. This is the beginning of Sayaka's most consistent character trait. Sayaka is a very intelligent and reasonable character, but she is also terminally prone to making promises that she can't or won't keep, and then hating herself for breaking them. She promised Mami she wouldn't heal Kyosuke for selfish reasons when in fact she does want him to be grateful to her, and she promised not to become a magical girl. But in the heat of the moment with Kyosuke, when she finds that she can't just sit back and let him be in pain, she breaks both promises. Afterwards, when she's talking to Madoka about the first of her broken promises, the promise not to become a magical girl, Sayaka makes yet another promise that she will swiftly break. She promises not to pressure Madoka into becoming a magical girl. In many ways, these are not entirely Sayaka's failings. Kyubei manipulates her possibly the most out of any of the characters, showing up directly in her moment of vulnerability with Kyosuke immediately after he promised he was leaving, for one.
お別れだね。僕はまた僕との契約を必要としている子を探しに行かないと。
Liar.
He consistently reminds Sayaka as she's struggling that she's inherently inferior to her best friend in terms of her magical girl ability. This serves both to alienate Sayaka from Madoka and to further Kyubei's ultimate goal, putting more pressure on Madoka to become a magical girl and accept his deal. Ultimately, Sayaka matters very little to Kyubei. Sayaka, Mami, and Kyoko are all just pawns in this game of chess that's being played between Homura and Kyubei over the fate of Madoka's soul. We find out towards the end of the show that this entire season is only one instance of a time loop that has been initiated by Homura, the mysterious transfer student. Before Homura became a magical girl, she became friends with Madoka. She loves Madoka deeply, and so when in the original timeline Madoka died, Homura made her wish to have the ability to redo events, specifically to have the ability to redo her meeting with Madoka. As she experienced more timelines, Homura came to understand exactly how insidious Kyubei's magical girl promise actually is. He is a member of an alien species that does not understand human emotion, and his only desire is for magical girls to be born and die to create energy, which will help keep the universe alive. The girls are essentially transformed into zombies when they make the deal, with their souls trapped inside of their magical gems, and if their soul becomes too blackened, whether through overuse of their powers or through negative emotions, they succumb and become witches themselves, creating an endless cycle of despair.
この国では成長途中の女性のことを少女って呼ぶんだろ。だったらやがて魔女になる君たちのことは魔法少女と呼ぶべきだよね。
Since then, Homura has been stuck repeating events over and over in an attempt to save Madoka from becoming a magical girl and being doomed to the dark fate that they all share. Homura doesn't care about Sayaka any more than Kyubei. In the endless loops that she's been repeating, she has developed a single-minded focus on Madoka and only Madoka.
マドカは関係ないでしょ。いいえ。何もかもあの子のためよ。
In the final episodes, as Homura begins to despair and realizes that she will never be able to save Madoka, Madoka finally makes the deal with Kyubei. But this is a wiser Madoka than in any of the previous timelines, and in a bittersweet finale, she makes a wish to eliminate all witches before they are born, allowing magical girls to die a peaceful death when their powers are spent. Sayaka is representative of every girl Kyubei ever tricked, the girls who didn't see through his lies, who fell for the riches that he promised them. Sayaka doesn't have one person dedicating their life to protecting her the way that Madoka does with Homura. Sayaka is why the girls need Madoka to make her sacrifice in the final episode. Sayaka is every girl who fell to despair that Madoka is saving, which is also why special attention is paid to her in the finale, but we'll get to that later. Now we're gonna go back in time a little bit and talk more about Sayaka's arc and how it specifically relates to the events of the finale. So, Sayaka promises not to pressure Madoka into becoming a magical girl, but a few episodes later yells at her about just that.
キューベイから聞いたわよ。あんた誰よりも才能あるんでしょ。私みたいな苦労しなくても簡単に魔女をやっつけられるんでしょ。私は無理でしょ。当然だよね。
Sayaka is unable to prevent herself from becoming resentful. It's a human impulse and deeply understandable. She's learned she's made a terrible mistake and condemned herself to a zombified existence of conflict and torment. And her best friend is someone she's told over and over again would handle this existence incredibly easily and could even save Sayaka from the fate she's resigned to. But Madoka doesn't want to do it, for very good reasons, but still she doesn't want to. Sayaka can't help but let these festering emotions get the better of her in a moment of weakness, and she hates herself for it. I've left the most important broken promise for last, even at the price of going somewhat out of sequence. Sayaka's most character-defining promise is so important that it arguably has 2 episode titles devoted to it. The first is episode 5, There's No Way I'll Ever Regret It. This is of course about Sayaka promising that she will not have any regrets about choosing to become a magical girl and will fight for justice and peace. This is ultimately a childish promise, which is obvious to the outside observer, but Sayaka is in fact a child, and this statement reminds us of that. She has a precise image of the kind of person that she wants to be, and whenever reality reminds her that she isn't quite measuring up, she despises it and herself. This is also the episode in which Sayaka meets her narrative foil, Kyoko Sakura. Clearly a character that I have some attachment to. While Kyoko and Sayaka share the origin of having made a wish for someone else's sake, Kyoko's way of dealing with the fallout is completely different. Upon realizing that her wish was a mistake, she decided to act completely selfishly. She only destroys witches after they're powerful enough that she can reap the ultimate rewards, no matter how many people get hurt in the process. This strengthens Sayaka's convictions to become a warrior of justice. She doesn't want to be anything like Kyoko, who she perceives as monstrous. In their first meeting, the two characters try to kill each other and are stopped by Homura. Contrary to the episode title, it doesn't take long for Sayaka to, in fact, regret it. After finding out that her soul has been removed from her body and placed into a soul gem, she is devastated because she can no longer have the physical connection that she craved with Kyosuke. This is exacerbated by their mutual friend Hitomi telling Sayaka that she's going to ask Kyosuke out if Sayaka doesn't. She feels inhuman. She can no longer feel like a shining warrior of justice when in her heart she knows she's made a terrible mistake. And the fact that she's regretting that mistake makes her feel even more hypocritical. Kyoko tries to combat this belief in the wonderful church scene where she opens herself up to Sayaka in a moment of vulnerability. She tries to make a connection over the traumas that they share and the similarity she perceives, that they both made a mistake. They both used their wish for someone else when they should have used it for themselves. She shares her life philosophy of only living selfishly in an attempt to give Sayaka a coping mechanism so she can handle what is happening to her. But Sayaka can't handle such a visibly selfish mentality. This doesn't help her cope because it only takes her further away from the Knight of Justice persona that she imagines for herself. She rejects Kyoko wholesale, and in so doing, she actually brings Kyoko a little bit closer to Sayaka's more selfless mentality. And then comes the second episode named after one of Sayaka's broken promises. Episode 8, I Was Stupid, So Stupid. Ugh, that still gets me after all these years. This is the episode where Sayaka has to own up to every one of her broken promises. She made a wish for Kyosuke that was truly a wish for herself. She became a magical girl after promising not to. She asked Madoka to save her after promising that she would never pressure her. And she said she'd never regret a single thing. And as she says herself, I think it is her admitting that she regrets every one of those choices that truly sends her over the edge into despair. She has every piece of her own hypocrisy thrown back into her face. She feels she can never be with Kyosuke after learning about the soul gem and that she will lose him to Hitomi. Her life as a magical girl has been a miserable, violent, and painful one. She feels she's done something unspeakably cruel to Madoka, and she regrets all of those things with every fiber of her being. And here, Sayaka's mistakes catch up to her, and she transforms into a witch. Her last words are only the confirmation of all of her regrets. I think one of the most perfect things about Madoka as a tragedy is that the characters really do try to make good choices to the best of their ability. But ultimately, there's not a lot these girls can do about being middle school kids with the odds stacked against them from the start. Madoka's mother serves the role of reminding us how very young these girls are, and a lot of her advice that would be wise in any other circumstance ends up sending them deeper into their tragedy. I think what she and Miss Saotome, the girl's teacher, discuss after Sayaka's death really emphasizes this. They're talking about Sayaka and Hitomi squabbling over Kyosuke and how eventually the girls would have just seen this as silly bickering if it wasn't for the tragedy that has occurred. And ultimately, that's true of Sayaka's choices throughout her story. If the stakes weren't so high, these would have all been the perfectly forgettable actions of a middle school girl. Who among us as a middle schooler can say that we didn't have unrealistic expectations of our own abilities, that we didn't get into petty and sometimes cruel fights with our friends, that we didn't make selfish and ill-advised decisions because of our emotions? And yet, because of the stakes that she was thrust into, these silly childhood mistakes put Sayaka in a world of pain and tragedy. This is even foreshadowed a few episodes earlier in a conversation between Madoka and her mother about Sayaka. With what little understanding of the situation that Madoka's mother has, she urges Madoka to make a mistake for Sayaka. To save Sayaka from driving herself to distraction trying to be perfect, Madoka's mother urges her to fail in some way on Sayaka's behalf, to run away or to tell a lie.
だからさ、大人になる前に今度は間違え方もちゃんと勉強しときな。若いうちは怪我の治りも早い。
Madoka listens and tosses Sayaka's soul gem off of a bridge to try and prevent Sayaka and Kyoko from fighting again. However, if it wasn't for Homura, this would have killed Sayaka. It's the first example that we see of the way that normal solutions for childhood problems won't work here. The stakes are just too high. Adults can't advise these magical girls as if they were children because their problems are not childhood problems.
背負ったものが増えるほど下手を打てなくなってく。
And Sayaka too meets a fate worse than death because of her own mistakes and regrets. For a character like her, where she really wanted to help people, where she tried to hold on to that through all of her pain, we really understand why becoming a witch is infinitely worse than dying. More than just vanishing from the world, Sayaka will create the pain that she fought to eliminate. And then we come to Kyoko. Kyoko is a perfect part of Sayaka's tragedy because they both learn from each other too late. Sayaka ultimately realizes that she should not have been trying to be perfect, that she was stupid, so stupid. The thing that Kyoko has been telling her all along. But she only allowed herself to fully realize it when she was at her lowest, when this information could only hurt her instead of helping her to change. And Kyoko did listen when Sayaka preached about selflessness, about helping people. For the first time in years, Sayaka made Kyoko admit to caring for someone beyond herself. After the two of them find out the truth about the soul gems, Kyoko's role in the story completely shifts. Kyoko becomes the heroine of her own story, trying to save Sayaka, a girl in which she sees herself but better. She really does see the knight of justice in Sayaka that Sayaka so desperately wants to be. There's some beautiful symbolism here in the wind chimes when Kyoko tells her plan to save Sayaka to Madoka. We see a mermaid and a unicorn representing Sayaka and Kyoko. Sayaka's witch form Octavia has a mermaid tail, and Kyoko's witch form from the PSP game, Ophelia, rides a horse. So after Sayaka transforms into a witch, Kyoko tries to become the fairy tale hero herself. The whimsy that Kyoko has so distanced herself from comes back in full force when she begins to believe that she can actually do some good in the world.
最後に愛と勇気が勝つストーリーってのは考えてみたらそういうのに憧れて魔法少女になったんだよね。
But this isn't that kind of story. Childish solutions will not work on these adult problems. Kyubei is behind the machinations here as well, implying that Kyoko's ideas to save Sayaka might work when in fact he knows full well that they won't. But these girls are too deep in his trap to realize. Kyoko tries the fairy tale solution. She has Madoka call out to Sayaka's witch form and try to reach her, but it doesn't take long to realize that this is futile. Sayaka's witch form rages and tries to kill them both as they both desperately reach out to her. Sayaka is well and truly gone, and whatever's left only wants to hurt and kill the people that she once held so dear. When they realize this, Kyoko has had enough. She's lived through an endlessly cruel world, and Sayaka was the only person left in it who meant anything to her. In a great explosion of power, she destroys Sayaka's witch form and dies alongside her. So, Sayaka's worldview did convince one person, but it was far too late for it to matter. The love between Kyoko and Sayaka is a reflection of the love between Homura and Madoka.
ただ一つだけ守りたいものを最後まで守り通せばいい。なんだかな。私だって。今までずっとそうしてきたはずだったのに。
Kyoko didn't have the option of wishing to go back in time, but if she had, I believe she would have taken it. She was ready to sacrifice everything for Sayaka, just as Homura was for Madoka. This story is representative of how many thousands upon thousands of magical girls had stories just like theirs. Even these events between Sayaka and Kyoko are only one iteration of their fate through the time loops. Maybe in other timelines, Sayaka died trying to save Kyoko, or they both died or became witches together. This kind of story, and we as the audience seeing it and knowing that it is one tragedy among many, is why Sayaka is so important. Without her, we have no personal connection to the tragedies of these many magical girls. Mami's story is sad, but it's more shocking than it is agonizing. With Sayaka, we witness how many girls were inexorably drawn into Kyubei's web and had no way out, even after they realized that they'd made a mistake. Seeing the deep pain that she feels when she transforms into a witch makes us too breathe a sigh of relief when Madoka makes her wish and destroys all witches before they can be born. Now that we know the alternative, the pain that becoming a witch brought to Sayaka and to Kyoko, we know that a peaceful death really is the better option. And this brings us to Sayaka's role in the final episode. After Madoka's wish rewrites the world and the laws of magical girls, we get one more scene between her and Sayaka. Madoka visits many of the girls, seeing dreamlike visions of their pasts and futures as she transcends time, space, and understanding. With Sayaka, the two of them sit and they watch Kyosuke's violin concert. Madoka tells Sayaka that she couldn't have saved her from becoming a magical girl because if she had, this future would have never come to pass. Kyosuke would never have been healed if it wasn't for Sayaka's wish, and Madoka didn't want to erase all of the pain and suffering that she endured to give him that chance. Sayaka accepts this, and she says the line that finally, peacefully resolves her character arc.
もう何の後悔もない。
In this final scene, Sayaka accepts all of her mistakes. She chose to save Kyosuke, she chose to become a magical girl, and Madoka doesn't want to take those choices away from her. And in saying there's nothing left to regret, Sayaka accepts her past regrets. She playfully pokes fun at Hitomi and Kyosuke being together, showing that that no longer bothers her.
京介にはもったいないくらいいい子だし。
Madoka's wish has helped Sayaka find peace. The last time we saw this version of her in the show, she was crying in misery, about to be utterly destroyed by the force of her own despair. But Madoka has changed that. The excellent writing of this show allows us to both come to love Sayaka in all of her flaws, and because of them, and come to accept her passing. The final scene with the two of them may stir a tear or two, but it's nothing like the gut-wrenching scene of Sayaka transforming into a witch. It's through this character moment that we really understand the bittersweet nature of Madoka's final choice. And that is why Sayaka and her story are so important to Madoka Magica. Now, I know this doesn't get into Rebellion, but I really want to see the follow-up movie before I speak on that. I find Rebellion really wonderful and fascinating, but I feel like there's so much in it that I can't fully analyze until I know how it resolves, which it's incredible that we might finally actually get that resolution after all these years. Let me know if you'd be interested in hearing any more of my thoughts on Madoka. I'd love to talk some more about it sometime because it's one of my favorite shows of all time. And thanks so much for watching. Bye!